So in this video, I want to specifically talk to all these solo shooters out there because that's primarily what I have always been, whether I'm doing commercial work, narrative films, or YouTube videos. I pretty much am run and gun and solo operating the whole time. And later in this video, I'm actually going to compare the Ronin 4D with one of the most highly regarded solo operator cameras currently out there, the Sony FX6. And this comparison wouldn't be possible without today's sponsor, OHD Studios. OHD is pretty much the best rental house for any professional video production that you could have in not only Ohio, but now they have a new location in Louisville, Kentucky, and servicing pretty much the whole Midwest. If you have any camera, lenses, grip, or any sort of gear you need for your production, they're not just a rental house, but a one-stop shop for all your production needs. If you're like me and have no idea how to use a camera system, you can go in, they're gonna completely set things up for you, change all the settings to the exact way you want. Oh, and they also have this really small, cool little studio which houses their insane video wall and their Bolt camera robot. Whatever your filmmaking needs are as an independent, all the way up to commercials and feature films, OHD Studios is absolutely the resource that everyone should go to. So if you all want to learn more, definitely check them out in the top link in the description below. And again, huge thanks to them for lending me this FX6 so that I can use it, understand why so many solo operators love this camera, and compare that to my experience for the past month with the Ronin 4D. But before we get to that, let's talk about what I love, don't love, and just my overall experience with the 4D a little bit more in detail than my previous video a month ago. The monitor is large, incredibly bright, and the design of the menu system still deserves all the awards. As a content creator and someone who struggles to fill themselves using Blackmagic, and it's for years been one of my biggest issues, constantly having to travel with extra monitors and batteries, it is very nice having this screen, being able to rotate, and I just have my C1 button custom mapped to flip the screen. So I just press a button when I want to flip it upside down, press it again, and it goes right back over. Now next up, I want to talk about battery life. They're about 97 watt hours, and compared to any other V-mount or gold mount option out there, they're very fairly priced. And I gotta say, I'm thoroughly impressed with how long this system lasts on one relatively small battery. I haven't done any scientific tests, but I definitely am getting between 2 and 3 hours of use on each battery. And where it becomes even cooler is the charger that it comes with charges these batteries insanely fast. By the time one battery has gotten low, the other one is easily ready to go. The charger that it comes with also doubles as just an AC power adapter if you wanted to just have infinite power, so that's pretty nice. Then you have the media. I'm mostly shooting ProRes LT. For me, that's kind of been the best balanced codec of still really high quality, but doesn't immediately fill up the cards in just 30 minutes or something. I would love to shoot ProRes RAW, but until DaVinci gets support for that. When it comes to the mobility of the camera, I gotta say, this is the first time that the case that the camera came and was shipped in, I use every single day. That has become the actual travel case. You can break this thing down and set it up so fast, and you can actually store 2 batteries, one of course in the camera, and then they have an extra little slot in there. The accessories pouch that it came with has a good amount of space. For audio, I've been using a pretty basic setup that sounds really well for this camera. I'm just using my Sennheiser MKE440. I love this microphone. Obviously, I've been using it the past handful of years. So I just grab a good hot shoe adapter here, off to the side just like that. Throw it on the side of the handle. And then right back here, you have your 3.5 millimeter mic jack, as well as a headphone jack below that for monitoring. And for those curious if it gets in the way with the Z-axis or anything, I believe I have to tilt it up slightly with the LiDAR on. Boot up here. Hey, you can see that the mic clears just fine. Now, a lot of people have been asking about the XLR expansion plate. I personally don't have any new news from DJI. I heard one rumor that it may be coming soon, that they were just having like some frequency or interference issues. But I do hope that accessory comes soon, because adding XLR is only going to make this thing that much more usable in the professional markets. Okay, so now let's talk camera comparisons. And of course, we're talking about equivalent lenses. So this is the Sony 16-35 G Master lens, which is going to cost you another $2,300 You get some batteries, and now you're talking pretty much a level playing field between these two cameras. I wanted to see how these cameras compared in the experience of solo operating, kind of just with what they have. So let's break it down into two phases. We have the actual operating the camera and usability, and then we have the final image quality. So first, let's talk about the experience of operating them. Both cameras honestly feel very ergonomic in the hands. I really do like the handle of the FX6. I think the entire camera is extremely well balanced. Obviously this one's a little back heavy with the bigger V mount. Nice thing about the 4D when solo operating and doing a bunch of these big movements is the fact that I have active track and autofocus constantly kind of doing the heavy lifting, to be honest, if you're just trying to get a bunch of different angles and shots for like modeling type stuff. When I threw this in S&Q mode, which is the higher frame rate, I'm at I guess 4K 60 now, but it lets you know on the screen that it's only manual focus. So that's gonna make things a lot more interesting. Add that on to the fact that we don't have any sort of stabilization right now. We'll see what we can get. Right, so especially because the screen is just not the same brightness as the 4D, it was really hard to maintain manual focus. So now I'm gonna take slow motion off so I can get autofocus, just so we can see a true autofocus comparison between the two cameras. I get it, you have to learn the lingo of the camera manufacturer, like slow motion. Like if I didn't have OHD to show me how to use this, borderline Elvis who works there literally set this camera up to me. He just, he asked me like, what settings do you want? I'm like, give me, you know, the best quality recording I can go with. And he's like, okay. So again, huge thanks to OHD for making this kind of a fair comparison between these two so I could get them matching. And then because the screen is so small and it's not bright at all, I even took a poll on Twitter to see if I was crazy. I asked other FX6 users like, hey, do you use this monitor that comes with it, or do you go external? And while it was closer than I expected, I'm guessing just because of ease of use of this being here, but a ton of people still prefer to use an external monitor for something bigger and brighter. Yeah, you don't need an external monitor on the 4D. This thing is insanely bright and huge and just beautiful and easy to work with. This in broad daylight when I was on a shoot with Essie was just horrendous. And so when I was in the slow motion mode, manual focusing with kind of the pretty weak peaking, if I may say so, like it just was not a fun experience. Then you have the 4D, which one, I just like the focus peaking better. You also have the LiDAR waveform, which is a really fun and cool way to get focus correct if you're manually focusing. But the autofocus options you do have are really impressive. Now, I'm not gonna debate anyone. Sony's autofocus, when you have that turned on and you're shooting in regular modes, it is without a doubt incredible. You don't even really have to think about it. It just kind of latches onto the subject and does great at focusing automatically. Autofocus, that's what that means. But this system not only allows you to autofocus, but it also has a AMF mode, which is kind of cool. It's like auto manual focus hybrid, where it will autofocus, but you'll actually see the wheel kind of change, and then you can, I want to say fight it, but basically just has some tension where you can manual focus, turn it to maybe focus on a different subject you may want. So an actor could be walking in front of the screen, autofocus is latched onto them, but maybe there's like a foreground object you want to quickly pull to for a moment before going back to the main subject. And so I can manually override the autofocus to focus on what I want. And then as soon as I let go, it's gonna latch back on to whatever it was autofocusing on. That is a really handy feature. It also, of course, has DJI's amazing tracking that they've been developing in their drones for years. And so with a lot of these shots of 𝗬𝗧𝗨 where I was just kind of running back and forth, you just feel so free to get creative shots with this camera setup, because I could just simply tap on her face and hit track, hit autofocus, and then I can just move with the camera. I can just put the camera in three-dimensional space that I want, and the camera is going to make sure that the subject remains in frame and remains in focus, and it did this incredibly well. Not perfect, definitely something that they are improving with each firmware update that I've seen, and I think the best case scenario for autofocus would be to have some hybrid of LiDAR as well as phase detection or contrast based like a lot of other cameras, but where those need the image to actually provide autofocus. LiDAR, the beautiful thing is it doesn't require anything to autofocus. It doesn't need the image, the sensor, or light at all. You can be in pitch black and this thing will autofocus for you. So that is a huge plus, especially shooting in low light. And using DJI's first party lens like this new 17-28, you don't have to manually calibrate anything. You just slap this lens on, it's good to go, it's automatically calibrated. And the lens is incredibly sharp, definitely on par with the 16-35 G Master, but at about $1,000 less in price. Now, Sony also has a 16-35 f4PZ lens, which has similar features where you can zoom in and out with just using something like the toggles on the grip handle here instead of having to actually grab the lens to do this. And that is cheaper than both of these lenses, but again, it's an f4 and it's not as high quality in the optics department. The 17-28 DJI lens is truly sharp edge to edge. Again, they've been developing their drone lenses for so many years now, and drones, you definitely want everything to be tack sharp. And they've taken all of that development and put it into this lens, and I truly can't wait to see what other focal lengths they come out with for this line. I desperately want something tighter, but even if you don't want this lens or you have existing lenses like this G Master lens, you can grab the Sony mounts that they now support, throw this exact lens on, and it's actually supported by this camera to where you can have all of your fancy features, autofocus, use the focus wheel without having to manually calibrate anything. A couple other notable features about the DL lens compared to something like the Gold Master or other equivalent lenses is one, being parfocal, something you don't see often in this price range, which simply means that when you are in focus on something at 17mm and zoom in, your focus isn't going to be thrown off. Whereas on even a lens like this, much more expensive, going from 16-35, you are going to have to readjust your manual focus or allow the autofocus to fix itself because the lens itself is not parfocal. I've also said it in my previous video, but I'm still impressed at how close the minimum focus is on this lens. When it comes to the image quality between the two, yes, both of these look incredible. I loved the look that I was getting out of it. I want to say the FX6, I got a little bit more character in the raw image that I was getting out of camera, and I would say the 4D had a much cleaner image. It just was sharper and a bit more contrasty as soon as you converted it from D-Log, but it also handles low light way better than I expected, honestly. And this has dual native ISO at 800 and 5000. This one, again, says it can go up to like 12,800 ISO, but when I was adjusting the ISO, it only would go up to 3200. I don't know why it wouldn't go higher. And I just had a few more minutes on the shoot. And again, time matters, and this was a real world test where, you know, a model was waiting. I couldn't sit there for 30 minutes reading a user manual. And so the nighttime stuff on this, I shot at 3200 because that's the highest I could go to. And like, it looks fine, but honestly, the 4D looked cleaner in my opinion. And that actually surprised me. I was expecting, you know, Sony's been low light king forever, and I was expecting this to blow the 4D out of the water in terms of noise performance, but this held up incredibly well. And just for fun, I shot one clip at 12,800, the highest ISO this will go at, and it's still totally usable. Add some simple denoiser, and it's an incredibly usable image. The other night, I captured a beautiful sunset with my kids in the backyard, and what I used was the new Sony E mount with an EF to E adapter, so I could throw on my EF IRIX cine lenses, threw on a Dream effects filter in the front. I didn't use any gimbal because it wasn't properly balanced. It's too heavy for that, but I used it in the scenario of a normal camera, threw the camera into 4K 120. It performs and works great just like any other camera out there. When using heavier lenses, it's recommended to have a lens support system. Once set up though, I believe you can pretty much use any lens you want, just like any other camera. And one more note I want to point out. At one point for another YouTube video, I wanted to test myself after a month of using this. I grabbed my RS3 Pro and my Pocket 6K Pro and filmed a whole YouTube video with that setup, the same setup I've been using for years. And I found something very interesting, and that is when you have a camera on a gimbal like this, all of the weight is vertical. And I found that it was way more exhausting in a shorter amount of time, you know, constantly tilting up and down, panning around, and having all of the weight vertically compared to the 4D, which is very well balanced forward and back. It's still a decently heavy camera setup. So for all you event, wedding, whatever shooters, this is gonna be way less exhaustive than a regular gimbal setup. But to be honest, all of those features add up into an experience I can only label as freeing. When an idea for a shot came to me, I was just able to execute. When I had the FX6 in my hand, I found myself getting all of my basics, but playing it safe. In my head would be this really cool, like almost crane shot that I would picture in my head, but I'd be like, well, I know it's not gonna stabilize that well in post. And so I'm either going to shoot at 60 FPS and get a little bit of motion in there, or I'm just going to play it safe and get some very, small movements. Whereas this, if in my head was like a crane shot, I could just get that. If it was a locked off like handheld shot, I could just get that. And even if it was just me sprinting down the road as I'm flying past the model, knowing that I don't have a first AC pulling focus and someone else controlling the gimbal motors, the built-in LiDAR autofocus and tracking just makes it super easy to get very complex shots without thinking about it. And that resulted in a much more fun experience for both myself, the clients, the model, everyone involved. So yes, while you could achieve all those same shots if you rig this up to a gimbal, if you had a first AC, it requires a lot more equipment, a lot more time, and a lot more people. And again, this video is in the perspective of a solo operator. There's a lot of flexibility and things that DJI can do with this camera over time, but for now, I honestly think it is a worthy contender for anyone in this price range of camera. Let me know what you guys think down in the comments below about it. Again, huge thanks to OHD for sponsoring this video, lending me the Sony FX6, and teaching me a ton about camera robots, video walls, and everything else cool they have going on over there. Check them out in the link in the description. And thank you for watching. See you guys in the next video.